Well, as you can imagine, it's a critical week at the White House, from managing Afghanistan to cajoling fellow Democrats on Capitol Hill. To analyze both of these issues, I'm joined now by Lisa Lehrer of the New York Times and Aaron Haynes of the 19th. Amy Walter and Tamara Keith are away on this Monday. So to both of you, as we've been hearing, we've been discussing COVID, Afghanistan, enormous issues confronting this White House. And right now, Aaron, the president is facing criticism on some support, but a lot of criticism, not just from Republicans, but from members of his own party. How is that different than what the Democrats are saying, many of them calling for investigations? And does it suggest in some way that the president is going to be able to get through this or not?
Well, I think it's still early days, Judy. I mean, we're a week into this Afghanistan exit, and certainly the handling of this is something that folks are wanting accountability for. You had the president telling George Stephanopoulos in that interview that even in his calculus, months ahead of what we've seen unfold in the last week, that he knew that it was going to be a chaotic process. Obviously, that is exactly what is unfolding, and yet, yes, you absolutely have some folks even within the Democratic Party who are really being very critical of the administration's response, and you see the administration being increasingly responsive. The president delaying, going back to Wilmington so that he could look responsive on this issue. So many administration officials out on the Sunday shows over the weekend, and even today, trying to engage with members of the press, trying to appease them as they continue to kind of, raise questions about the way that this exit is being handled, and what folks can expect going forward, particularly vulnerable Afghanis who were helpful to us during this war, the women and girls who we know are going to be vulnerable under a Taliban regime, and so Democrats are going to they're saying that there could be hearings as soon as this week, dealing with accountability from the Biden administration. So I think that even as this is early, I think we're going to continue to see folks even within his own party, as well as obviously Democrats and members of the political press continuing to try to hold this administration accountable, and them continuing to try to respond.
And Lisa, to you, how do you see this distinction between what Democrats are saying, what Republicans are saying about the administration's handling of Afghanistan while they are in the middle of dealing with this full-blown crisis?
Well, Republicans, as would be expected, are taking a much harder line against the administration than Democrats. The Democratic criticism, while notable, because it's really the first time we've heard Democrats breaking with the administration since President Biden came into office, is quite a bit more restrained, which the White House is taking as a good sign. The White House is betting here politically that as this story fades from a constant rotation on TV news and from the headlines, the American public will forget how this was handled in some form. And by the time we all get to the midterm elections, 15 months or so from now, the president and his party will get credit for being the ones that finally took the country out of Afghanistan, which remains a politically popular position. That is a political gamble. And a lot of Democrats, while in public they're a bit restrained in their criticism, privately say they're quite worried. And they look at some of the arguments coming out of the Republicans, who are basically trying to use this to make a larger case against the administration, painting this as an example of incompetent leadership, as failed leadership, and they see that as a way of they see that as something that has the potential to become a narrative in these midterm elections, and a narrative that could be damaging for Democrats, because their fate, for better or worse, is really intimately tied to how the White House does.
Well, there's always a lot on the president's plate, and right now it's not just Afghanistan. It's, as we mentioned, of course, COVID, but it's also, Aaron, the infrastructure legislation, which the White House has been trying to get Congress to approve for months. Critical votes coming up in the House of Representatives this week. Interesting pressure on both the Democratic leadership, where, again, Nancy Pelosi faces the split we referred to earlier between progressives and moderates in her own party, and pressures on Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader. Just quickly to both of you, I'm interested in what the political calculus looks like for leaders in both parties right now in the House.
Yeah, well, Judy, what's one thing that's interesting is a new term that I think that we're learning this week: conservative Democrats, which you saw progressive Democrats using to frame moderate Democrats who are not getting on board with this infrastructure package and kind of getting this thing across the finish line more challenging than I think the administration thought that this was going to be, particularly given how popular the American Rescue Plan has been with American voters, and that as these voters have started to get things like their child tax credit checks, seeing kind of the direct relief from their government on the pandemic, which frankly was what a lot of the voters that I certainly spoke to last year said that they voted for, wanting their government to be responsive to especially the economic part of this pandemic. And so, we're in August now. We know that the focus is about to turn again from governing back to campaigning. And so I think for both parties looking to be able to hit the campaign trail with something with a message to voters that they, on what they've been delivering this year is very important. It'll be interesting to see. We certainly know that Minority Leader McCarthy and Speaker Pelosi are not, friends by any stretch. And so, the tack that he takes in terms of the message that he gives to his party about whether to get on board with this, whether that is, politically beneficial to him, we haven't seen that yet. But I think it'll be interesting to see kind of how that plays out in terms of how that moves things ahead on this issue.
Lisa Lehrer, just in 30 seconds. So what do you think?
I think the part of the place, so of course, Speaker Pelosi is the person to watch on this, but what this story is really telling us is about the larger divides in the Democratic Party. These are divides between the moderate and the liberal wing that have been going on for 6 years now, and there's no resolution. While progressives seem to have the upper hand on policy here in Washington, in these off-year elections, moderates have done quite well. So I think you have two factions of the party that are both empowered. And I think Speaker Pelosi has quite the knot to untangle to get this thing through.
Quite the knot to untangle. And we'll be watching it this week. There could be a vote in the next day or so. Lisa Lehrer, Aaron Haynes, thank you both. We appreciate it.